Hi, everybody. This is Margie Meacham, and this is another Brain Matters podcast. Today, my guest is J.D. Dillon, and J.D. has spent 15 years designing and implementing learning and performance strategies for all kinds of great global organizations, including the Walt Disney Company, Kaplan, and AMC Theatres. He takes a very practical approach, so we have that in common, to integrating science, storytelling, and just plain common sense. And he delivers these solutions that enable employees, improve performance, and drive business results. In his current role with Axonify, JD works with an award-winning team to boost employee knowledge and performance for the leading organization through the application of modern learning practices and cutting-edge technology. He also writes the Just Curious Learning blog, and I highly recommend it, and you'll see that link included with this podcast on my site. You'll find him on many live Twitter chats, like the one I'm frequent, which is hashtag LRNCHAT, Learn Chat. I finally had the chance to meet JD face-to-face earlier this year at Learning Solutions by the E-Learning Guild, and we had a great time. It was wonderful to finally see him face-to-face. He's always at the leading edge of learning technology, and he's also one of the most generous sharers of his information that I've ever met. So I know you guys are going to really enjoy getting to know him better. JD, I'm really happy to be speaking today. Let's start with your work at Axonify. What can you tell me about it?
Sure. So at Axonify, by title, I'm Principal Learning Strategist. But what that essentially means is that I kind of take an internal, external consultant approach to my role. So within the organization, I work across disciplines, including the product team, sales, marketing, instructional and design group, to help bring practical, real-world perspective on corporate learning into everything we're doing and the products that we're building, given that, I've come out of the world of the practitioner, having been trying to deal with large enterprise challenges and solving problems in the day-to-day and having the various demands on you from various stakeholders. And also coming from an operational background, I have a little bit of a more practical approach, as my bio kind of speaks to, in the way that I look at things, and will it actually make sense, in the day-to-day life of the employee in a modern workplace. So internally, I'm trying to, help strengthen everything we're doing by bringing that real-world approach to play. And then externally, I'm working with both prospective customers and our current customer base to really help them take a look at not just what the Axonify platform can do for them, but help to kind of expand the scope of our conversations to really think about what does a modern learning ecosystem look like, and what different types of approaches and tools can we use to strengthen what Axonify is able to do for an organization, but also make sure that it's creating a consistent and high-quality experience that's really helping people do their jobs better, given that I think there's a lot of things that we need to take into account nowadays as learning professionals in an organization with the pace that organizations move. So really helping to try to take that conversation from just, not just being about a vendor and a piece of technology, but about the larger considerations around the unique ecosystem that's in play in their company and how we can help them really kind of take advantage and leverage all of these different components and then use Axonify to make it even stronger.
Okay, thanks. And if someone wants to learn more about Axonify, where can they go?
Sure. Our website's Axonify.com. So a variety of great information, including some videos that kind of walk you through a little bit of what the platform and our approach looks like. But there's also a lot of great stories. That's one of my favorite parts of the website. Is it's very story-centered around different organizations and a variety of different use cases in different industries that have become our partners and implemented our platform and the real results they've seen. So it's not just about successful implementation and who's using it, how many people, and how many things are being done. It's really about the real world results and the business outcomes that we're helping organizations achieve, whether it be increase in sales and improving customer experiences or decreasing safety incidents, and really bringing learning into real world outcomes is what we pride ourselves in.
Okay, great. So let's talk about those tools. I just read in your blog a recent post where you were saying that learning professionals have such a variety of tools available today, and you were explaining how you might use those in your work. So tell us about one of the newest tools that you've been using.
Sure. I wouldn't say it's necessarily new to me. I think it's still relatively new in general, but I have a renewed appreciation and a renewed focus on using it effectively, and it's Slack from a group chat perspective. given that I've been using group chat applications for years because I've always been a part of virtual teams. In a lot of cases, I was leading virtual teams, so I had different team members spread across the United States, and how we bring them together and collaborate in a meaningful and real-time way that's not just focused on events and meetings and email and things like that. So I've been doing that for years, but now the equations changed a little bit, given that Axonify is actually in Waterloo, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. I'm in Orlando, Florida. So I play a little bit of a unique role in the organization. I have a lot of external focus, a lot of work I do with the industry and with customers, in addition to with my peers in the organization. So I'm pretty much the only virtual employee, minus component of our sales team. But sales teams tend to be that way, in enterprises. So me being the only guy who's not in the office, I've been looking for ways to make it easier for members of the organization not just remember that I exist, but to collaborate with me in an ongoing fashion. And so I've turned to Slack very heavily, especially in my work with the product team and the development team, and really lean on it as the way that I reach into the office every time I need to, with meetings and things like that being a secondary tool for me.
And I know that a lot of my listeners are also working remotely. And if they're not right now, they probably have that opportunity in their future. So thanks for that recommendation. What about tools that have maybe lost their relevance, or somebody is doing it better? Is there any tool you've stopped using recently?
There's a tool that I was forced to stop using because it shut down. So this past
That's the
weekend
one
we
I
lost
was thinking
Slack.
of.
Yeah, we lost
Yeah.
Slack, and we're actually about to lose Google Hangouts on air in September. So for me, again, it kind of relates to the virtual nature of my work, but not just from a collaboration and day-to-day task perspective, but from the desire to, from where I'm sitting without the benefit of an event or a conference, to really engage people in conversation, and to get out there and have open collaborative moments with people who are interested in similar things. And I think that, social tools help us to a certain point. I think anyone who's ever heard my name probably knows how active I am on Twitter, and various other social tools. But there's only so much context and so much you can do through a blog and through Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and whatnot. And I've found that the ability to have these open conversations with streaming technology and to bring people, into your experience in a more meaningful, contextual way has really high value. But right now there seems to be a gap in the evolution of streaming technology when you think about it being a conversation and not just a one-way broadcast. So Facebook Live and Periscope and whatnot, you can use those in Snapchat to bring people into this one-way moment to say, here's what I'm doing and here's why it's interesting, or talk straight at the audience. But they can't really talk back in a meaningful way. So Blab was an interesting experiment that several of us have been conducting over the past several months, to just have those kind of talk show type moments with people at random, whether it's on topic or it's just, someone pops in and wants to have a conversation. So I'll be interested to see where, can YouTube pick this up, and are there other tools that may be coming down the pike that can enable folks like us to have conversations like this with other people in groups without having to wait for the conference that's happening next month, or these other types of event-driven ways.
Okay, great. And I'm sure that as soon as you find it, we'll be reading about it in your blog.
It will happen, yes.
Okay. Now, you're obviously really comfortable with learning technology, and you have been for a while. Have you always felt that way, or was there some big aha moment?
I can kind of pinpoint the moment that I became comfortable from a technology perspective, because I'm a firm believer that there is no such thing as generation or digital natives or any of this kind of stuff. I think it's really about the desire and to leverage natural curiosity and just try things and not become prescribed to what tools are specifically meant for, and allow that to bog you down because either you don't prescribe to the same use case or you don't think it's potentially useful for what you're trying to do. And I think ever since high school, that's kind of been my stance on technology, is that, yes, I understand this tool is built to do this, or most people use it for this. I, however, want to create a different experience or try to accomplish something else. So I'm gonna flex it until it breaks. And I actually remember the first PowerPoint presentation I ever built. and how
Hmm.
it's the level of detail I can remember is relatively asinine. And the things that I did with it were silly. But what's funny is you kind of take that PowerPoint presentation from high school and then you start to track my use of technology professionally into college and some things that I did, and then into my operational world, and then how do I eventually get into learning and development, and what's my college degree in. And it all kind of wraps around this willingness and desire to play with technology and to figure out how can I use it to accomplish the goal that I'm trying to accomplish. So I think that spirit has always been there. And as just new tools pop up, I just keep applying the same idea. And it's been helpful so far, especially working in an industry where you tend to have a lot of demands and very little resources to solve those problems. So it's, duct taping as best as possible, but really, end of the day, creating an experience that makes sense to people that you're working with, but using the best tools you've got with the right reasons.
That is so interesting. As you were telling that story, I remembered my first PowerPoint presentation, and I've never thought about it since then, but it was pretty much the same. I'm picturing it now and just kind of cringing. I was so proud of it. It was so cool. It was for sales training. And remember the typewriter animation? I loved
Yeah.
that. Oh my God, I subjected my audiences to that. And now I feel so bad.
Mine took place right around the same time that AOL exploded.
Hmm.
So I for the first time had access to digital files, especially audio files. And so there was an insane amount of audio in that presentation. I specifically remember the fact that it ended with the Tyrannosaurus Rex roar from Jurassic Park. Is how the presentation ended. It just, that makes no sense. But now I see how I've kind of been exhibiting the same behaviors for years since then.
Okay. So let's say there's somebody is listening right now and they're struggling to stay on top of the technology. They're the kind of person who says things like, I'm just not very technical. Do you have some advice for them so they can get a
Mhm.
little more comfortable?
Yeah, one, I think there's just the reality that no study, has proven that that's actually the case. So demographics don't match up with, what people tend to think about who's technical and who's not. So it's entirely about an individual and their willingness to play and their willingness to be curious. And I think it's about not allowing yourself to become overwhelmed with the stories that other people are painting of technology. Or, Snapchat's a great example. I tend to use it in a lot of presentations just to ask the audience how many people in our field are taking advantage of, or not even if they're using it, if they know what Snapchat is. And historically, I get a very low response rate. And for me, that's indicative of the fact that people have,
Go ahead.
Okay. People have prescribed a purpose to Snapchat, and they said, well, that doesn't apply to me. I think people need to look a little bit deeper at the technology, not what it's used for, but what it can be or how it can be helpful to what you're trying to do. And I know several learning practitioners. Helen Blunden's a great example out of Australia, who's taking great advantage of Snapchat in a way that I haven't seen someone in our industry do before. So I think it's about not allowing your decision to try a new toy or a new resource to be about how other people are using it or what the stories have been so far. It's really taking a deeper look at it and being willing to play, but at the same time, realizing it's not a huge investment. So if you play around with a new application and it's not resonating with you right now, you don't need to keep trying. You can step on to the next thing.
That's great. Thank you. And I was about to jump in and just agree with you. I just was loving what you were saying. Sometimes uh, I get so excited I start talking when my friend is still talking. So I apologize for that. Um, the other what I was about to say is what you're talking about reminds me of the growth mindset. It's really changing your mindset
Mm-hmm.
from pigeonholing yourself to I'm not technical and I won't be able to learn this stuff to I'm capable of this. I can get in there and play, and I'm always learning more. If you come in with that mindset, it completely changes how you approach technology. So,
Yeah,
Jay,
and the reality is that everyone is technical in some way.
mm,
Most people own a smartphone. I haven't seen a lot of flip phones hovering around of late. So it's not about having to be as technical as someone else. It's about being comfortable
mm.
with what you're trying to achieve and what your objectives are, but still being willing to play.
Yeah. And this next question I planned, I think you've actually mentioned more than three apps already. But if you had to boil it down to three apps that you would recommend, and this kind of flies in the face of what you just said, it's all about how you use it. But if you had to come up with three apps that you would like to encourage every learning professional to master or experiment with, at least, what would that be?
Sure. I'll kind of have a sideways answer to this because I think it's less about. It's hard for me to actually even look at my phone and say, of the 140-ish apps I've got on my phone, which three do I think are most important? I think it's almost more about a categorization of applications or tools right now based on where the field is going and the conversations that we're having. So I guess I'll kind of speak to a category and then speak to an example of. And I'll start with social technology. And I actually just got done writing a new blog post with Axonify around kind of the evolution of the conversation around social learning and kind of where it started several years ago. The fact that, social learning has always been social, but the kind of concerted conversation several years ago and where some folks are taking us now in the work of, Harold Jarkey and Julian Stodd and folks who are more talking about storytelling and networks and kind of the true evolution of social in the workplace. So I'd start with social technology. I'm always going to lean straight at Twitter. I know that Twitter is kind of in a moment right now of adoption question marks, and it's not really growing. So there's hopefully a need to improve the platform and provide more opportunities, which I think you're going to see soon, because I think things like moments are about to become accessible to the masses as opposed to just curated by the team at Twitter. But I think it starts with social technology, and I always look at Twitter as the best way for me to reach a large open audience without people having to follow me, or the ability to tag onto a conversation via the hashtag, and just things that I don't think other social tools allow us to do for kind of open collaborative conversations. So social tool, Twitter. Curation tools. So the ability for you to find and pull together content and kind of wrap an additional piece of meaning or context around it and put it back out into the world. So your ability to keep pace. And I think a lot of people tend to ask me, how do I keep up with certain things, or how do I find information to support what I'm trying to do professionally? And the answer is, I don't go find anything. It finds me, because I've found ways to curate content, pull it together, and then put it back out. So the one app that I continue to use is Flipboard. So I actually curate my own magazines on Flipboard about a variety of learning topics with the best content I find on the internet. I pull it together into these little collections and then push the collections back out into the world. So someone doesn't necessarily have to Google everything to try to figure out, what is knowledge sharing in the workplace and what are some things to think about. They potentially can look at my curation and jump off from the work that I have done. So I think curation's a huge need from a tool perspective. Flipboard's a great example. And the last thing I look at is I have a current fascination with text technology. I think that AI and bots and text exchange of information is considerably more interesting to me than virtual reality and augmented reality is right now. I think AR, VR is much more shiny and pretty and has these huge potentials to them. But the reality is, how do people really talk nowadays? And I've seen numbers that say something effective, email response rate and read rates are horrifically low, but 98% of text messages get opened and read. And I don't think we've really taken advantage of that as a way to really engage people in conversation. And now that organizations like Apple are opening up the iMessage platform to developers, and the fact that we can put more than just text into that text exchange, I think that's particularly interesting. So from a tool kind of category perspective, I'd be looking at things like iMessage, WeChat, and similar tools about how can we take advantage of those and kind of meet people where they are versus draw them into yet another application that they're less familiar with.
Yeah, I really am interested in that as well. You mentioned bots and augmented intelligence. I think, and I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, JD, but I think we are incredibly close to the singularity, not the astronomy one, but the augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence singularity, from the standpoint that we will interact with these bots as though they're real. They will pass the Turing test. And in fact, I suspect one of them already has. I wrote about it a few weeks ago. A college professor who was teaching a programming class created a bot and told everyone it was their teacher assistant, and that she worked from home, but she was always available. And he also built it to learn and adapt from the questions and the interactions. And it went on for a whole semester, and nobody suspected that this bot was, in fact, not a human being. So, in my opinion, it passed the Turing test. There seems to be still some discussions about that. Nobody wants to go there yet. But the potential to have people learn through text, those would be the kind of examples, because they were so engaging and people do respond. Reinforcement and quizzes and suggestions of follow-up reading, all kinds of things that we're now probably pushing out through email and clogging up people's inboxes. Text would be just so much more efficient. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how all that goes and what we're going to do once we're directly interfacing with a computer in our brain, which is probably going to happen in our lifetime and maybe remarkably soon. So they're already playing around with it. So that'll be fun. Now, on that line, I've got to ask you about Pokemon Go. We were part of a chat a couple of weeks ago on Learn Chat about it. Have you seen any educational approaches that might take advantage of something like that? I know you said the virtual reality is not as exciting to you right now as the text. I understand that, but right now we've got this phenomena taking over the world. What do you think about Pokemon Go? What's it tell us as educators?
I think one of the huge values behind the Pokemon Go phenomenon right now is the fact that it's opening the door to public awareness of that type of technology. So it's showing people that, what existing smartphone-based technology can be, and how you can lay digital content over the real world, and there's a value to that. Now, admittedly, the Pokemon Go application is relatively limited in the fact that it's just a character shows up on your screen. It has GPS coordination with, Google Maps backing, and it's not completely bringing you into a digital version of the real world, but the pieces are there. So I think for us and anyone else looking to leverage the technology for other applications, it's made the world more familiar. So the next time that you attempt to launch augmented reality is not new, right? I remember the first time I played with Layer, which is an augmented reality app. And this had to have been 2009, 2010 on my smartphone. And it just didn't do a lot, but it was still interesting about how I remember pointing my phone around. It just showed me where there was food. So if you're looking for a restaurant, point your phone in the direction. It layered on what restaurants were in that direction, which is interesting. It just wasn't hugely handy at that time. But it didn't kick up. It didn't pick, people didn't attach onto it, and no one had really built the killer app for that type of a concept.
Right.
I think part of it relies on the fact that you've got to pull your phone out, turn on an app, lift it up, and point the camera. Well, now that we're getting closer to wearable technology, that's not, I had Google Glass. I tried that out. It was interesting, but it had limited potential behind it. When someone gets to the point where they can actually free my hands and I can look through something and layer the digital world in play, and I point straight at Magic Leap as the interesting organization for that, it takes it to a whole other level. So I think Pokemon Go is opening another door to public consciousness and general familiarity with what this is going to be like. And then as it becomes more applicable to your daily life and your work, there may be a greater level of acceptance there, in addition to everything Pokemon Go is doing for drawing people out into the world and talking to one another and, hitting businesses that may not have tried before and all of these different things. So I'm interested around Pokemon Go to see 6 months later, where will we be and what will they need to do to the application to keep the momentum going if they can, given that it's in trend status right now. When the trend curve falls, will the application still be there, or will we be onto something else?
Yeah, and that reminds me of the Gartner hype cycle. Everything goes through it. All these apps go through that. And it's after it falls that the real meaningful application usually begins. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yep.
By the way, you don't have to teach me Pokemon Go anymore. I caught my first Pokemon. I figured out that I live in such a remote area, there's just nothing there to see. So I thought I was doing something wrong, and that I just thought that my backyard must be full of these little things, but that's not quite how it works. You've got to be out of sight, So I accidentally had it on when I was in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I said, "Oh, okay, I get it now." So you're off the hook. JD, as you
Yeah.
look back on all the things you've done and all the ways you've helped your clients and your teammates working with technology and building these practical uses for technology, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
I'd say that there's just, I'm most proud of the fact that I think there's a consistency in terms of where I have found, positive outcomes or success in the work that I've done. And it tends to be the fact that a lot of what I've been able to do is been able to reach into the front line of organizations, the people who are doing the work every day, and to make their ability to perform in their lives a little bit better. So whether it be, a lot of the work I did with Disney was around customer service training and service standards and storytelling around that, and really making it exciting, not just exciting for people to perform their roles, but give them some tactical ways that they could improve their experience and guest experiences. So really being able to hit them, individually in the context of their day-to-day. So something they could really do. And then at Kaplan, a lot of work around knowledge sharing and helping people get help, and just leveraging that concept of knowledge sharing and social technology. So it wasn't just about pushing messages at people. It was about giving people a voice and making, it feel like they had someone there and someone that could help them, even if they didn't know who it was, or they didn't necessarily relate me to the training team. And I find that interesting when that has happened to me, when people don't necessarily know who I am or what my position is or what team I'm associated to, but they identify me as the guy that was there that helped them, or the guy that connected them to the information they needed. And that is what's most important to me. And I think that I recently wrote something about this for ATD around the idea that I think the future of learning as a function, as an industry, is much more of a backseat than we've ever taken before. And for me, it's never important for me to connect who did it, or who implemented that system, or who owned that technology. It's about getting the outcome and helping people do their jobs better. I don't need them to know who did that. And I think it's important for us to take that position as learning development professionals, and that to help our stakeholders and partners and organizations understand that that's a valuable role to be played, so that we're no longer measured based on quantity of things and how much people see us, because I think that's where we go wrong. So for me, I've always been very proud of the fact that my work has become very practical and very easily used to help people do their jobs better, and in very specific cases over the course of my career.
Thanks for that. And I would agree with that from what I've seen in the time I've gotten to know you. So I think your legacy is actively growing in that direction. What are you working on right now that's got you really excited?
It's been interesting. So now that, I spent my entire career in the corporate space. So I was, in large enterprises. The smallest company I ever worked for until now had 14,000 people. So it's been an interesting transition to go from that world of 14,000, 60,000 employees in an organization to now a company where we're right around 100 at Axonify. And rather than try to solve, one set of problems for one organization, I'm now looking at, a considerably larger audience, which all have unique challenges and unique cultures and workplaces and use cases and things like that. But there's a tremendous consistency across that. So being a vendor, being, service offering, both from a technology perspective and a consultation services perspective, it's really looking at how can I bring that practical idea in a way that scales across all of these organizations and drive it through the technology that we're building. So, two of the things that I'm starting to take a look at right now are, we've already implemented a knowledge sharing component of the Axonify platform called Discovery Zone just a few months ago. And now we're working through both, how do organizations implement knowledge sharing in a meaningful way to help people solve problems, but then how do we build a technology that helps them overcome those challenges and overcomes a lot of the challenges that people have seen in the past using other tools to try to get people to share their knowledge. So I think we have an opportunity there. And then the other thing I'm just starting to take a look at is the idea of self-directed learning. People have used the word self-directed learning, they've used the word learning paths, career progression, all these different ideas. But how do we kind of take it out of the clouds a little bit? Because I think that, it's not reality to think that if you complete the following courses or you master the following topics, now you can become something, or now you are a manager. That's not the way the world works. Everyone took a different path to get to where they are. And it was a combination of experiences and knowledge growth and, all of these different things that make you a skilled professional. So how can I bring some of that to life in the way that Axonify is going to enable, potentially self-directed learning in the future for organizations and individuals? So it's an interesting challenge to tackle without, I think, stepping back into some of the things that just historically haven't worked for us. So those are two areas I'm particularly excited about right now.
Oh, great. And we can probably have you back in a while to have you tell us how that's going.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Okay. One last question, JD, and that is, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. So I'm online at jddillon.com. So from my site, which is where my blog is hosted, you can find a variety of different ways to contact me. I'm also on Twitter at @JD_Dillon. And I tend to respond to Twitter messaging faster than I do email. So that's the best way to reach me.
That's right. That's how I got you on my show. All right, everybody. I have been spending a great time with JD Dillon. He is a wonderful consultant with Axonify. He's also the author of the Just Curious blog, and all the information to learn more about JD and get in touch with him is provided along with the link to this post. Looking forward to seeing you at the next conference, JD, and catching up with you on Learn Chat.
Thank you very much. I agree. Great time. Thanks for having me, Margie.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.